What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Titletown Talk. I'm your host, Ian Ewing, and today I'm also your therapist, Ian Ewing, as we, on today's episode, will recap Sunday's devastating loss to the Carolina Panthers, 16-13, and we will talk about some silver linings and potentially some good news, if there is any after that, as well as the bad news, of course, and we will slowly transition to the Monday night game against the Philadelphia Eagles this coming Monday night. Well, guys, we talked about the different paths to victory that the Panthers had in this game, and I would say that it went probably as perfect as it could go for the Panthers in this one. They did exactly what they needed to do to win this game, and that was run the ball down the Packers' throats, give the Packers as few possessions as possible, and by running it, neutralize the Packers' pass rush. All of that is exactly what they did and more, and we'll talk about it on today's episode. We're going to do it a little bit differently today because, again, I'm pretty distraught over it. Yes, judge me for it. I've been listening to Packers podcasting content all week long so far, trying to deal with the loss, but here we are recording one of my own. We will talk about why the Packers lost. Then following that, we'll talk through the very small list of positives, in which there are a few. Then we'll wrap up talking through some of the reasons for optimism going into the Monday night matchup with the Eagles. First off, let's talk about why the Packers lost. Well, the main reason they lost is because the Panthers ran the ball and they kept the ball away from the Packers on offense. So going into the game, key number one for the Packers defense was to stop the run. It's the one thing that the Panthers do well. And if you recall, I did have a bit of a lack of concern. I thought the Packers could stop it, right? Those big games that Rico Dowdle had, they were kind of against bad defenses. You know, the Cowboys, the Dolphins. What did we learn in this one, guys? Rico Dowdle's a pretty damn good running back. And Dave Canales, the Panthers coach, he coached his ass off in this game. That long run by Dowdle that got them in field goal range at the end, they called a draw play on a play where the Packers essentially sent pressure. So, you know, one of many, many, many good play calls by Dave Canales in this one. The defense held the Panthers to 16 points, and I'm of the belief you should probably win 90% of those games, and I bet you if the Packers and Panthers played 100 times, the Packers win 90 of them. I guarantee you that. But it was the way that the defense played that bothered me. You know, they had guys there in the hole that could have made a stop almost every single time that Dowdle ran the ball. There were very few just like wide open run lanes. There were some, but he ran really, really hard. The dude literally had like a bloody knee at one point. He was limping around, gimping around. I mean, hats off to Rico Dowdle. I mean, another one that Jerry Jones effed up. If you guys didn't know, he was on the Cowboys last season. He was the Cowboys starting running back when, I guess, Zeke Elliott, who was there for a, cup of coffee, he ended up leaving, and Rico Dowdle was the go-to, and then they didn't sign him back. So, LOL to Jerry Jones. Again, we talked about it going into this game. You hope there was no one on this team that was looking forward to next week against the Eagles, but, in the form of a trap game, right? But it just felt like a lack of effort and intensity on defense, right? The Packers had 3 possessions in the first half. They scored 6 points. They fumbled in the red zone. Savion Williams, he fumbled. That one really, really hurt. And I do feel, and I'm not the only one that thought this as well, but I feel like if they scored a touchdown on that first drive, this game probably goes the other direction, right? The pass rush in this one, completely non-existent, but they still got pressure on almost half of Bryce Young's dropbacks. So again, it's just like, Micah Parsons was absent. Rashawn Gary played a pretty good game. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but it just felt like it was a very strange game where a ton of things needed to go wrong for the Packers to lose this, and all of them did, similar to that Browns game earlier this season, right? But again, the pass rush, Bryce Young dropped back 22 times. The Packers got 9 pressures. So, getting pressure almost half the time is pretty damn good. But, they were able to negate the pass rush because they were running the ball effectively. And that was, the story over and over again yesterday. Guys, Bryce Young barely broke 100 yards passing. He had 102 yards passing. The amount of times that someone's going to win a game with 100 yards passing, it's really, really rare. And yes, it happened last year for the Packers with Malik Willis against the Colts. But, the Packers ran for 245 yards in that game. The Panthers had a good running attack here, but it was just 140, right? This wasn't like they were dicing them up, right? But that running game was really, really effective, and they did exactly what they needed to do on offense. Keep the Packers pass rush from taking over, keep the offense off the field. Turnovers. That was another thing, right? That's another reason the Packers lost. Again, they outgained the Panthers by 110 yards in this game. And we talked about it going into it. If the Packers don't turn the ball over, they win the game. And that's still the case. They turned the ball over 2 times. And if you count the miss on 4th down where Jordan threw the ball across the field, near interception, right? They really did turn over 3 times. And when it comes to 4th down misses, right, with so many teams going for 4th down more often now, which I think is, by the way, the right thing to do, those really should count as turnovers, right? Those are plays where you give the ball back in pretty advantageous field position a lot of times. And, that should count on the stat sheet as a turnover, right? Yeah, the Packers were able to pick off Bryce Young, and it was a great play by Xavier McKinney, by the way. He played a great game in this one. He's one of the positives, sneak peek to later. But they still lost a turnover battle, right? 1 turnover was not enough. And it does feel like the Packers' turnover luck is starting to shift a bit. 1 turnover in a game where you basically have 3 of them. That's how you let an inferior team beat you, though, right? The main reason they lost was the failure in the red zone. This is the main reason they lost, right? Let's go through the Packers drive summary really quick. And if you guys have seen this, I apologize. I'm going to read it anyway, okay? 9 plays, 56 yards, fumble. They had the ball for 5 minutes. Second drive was all the way 3 minutes into the second quarter. 9 plays, 49 yards, field goal, 5 minutes of possession. Then it was 2 minutes of possession, 10 plays, 50 yards, field goal. Okay, that's halftime. It's 7-6 Panthers. The Packers get the ball. At halftime, they go 9 plays, 43 yards, missed a field goal. Right? Horrible. And then they get the ball back, 7 minutes, 41 seconds left in the third. 4 plays, 13 yards, and then Jordan Love's idiotic interception. And then they don't get the ball back again, guys, until till the middle of the fourth quarter. 13 plays, 58 yards, turnover on downs. And then they finally score a touchdown in their final possession of the game. So again, this wasn't some, clunker on offense for the Packers. Not really. They just didn't get a lot of opportunities. And you can literally look directly at the way the Panthers played the game on offense. So a game, guys, they didn't even punt. The Packers didn't even punt in this game. And you only get 13 points? I mean, it's literally just insane to me. And honestly, if you just convert, and the league average, guys, is I think it's 30% in the red zone. The Packers went 1 for 5 in the red zone. So even if you just get one more touchdown in this game, you win. You get 20 points and you win the game. Yes, they should have beaten this team. They got outplayed on the ground. They got outcoached at times on both sides of the ball, really. But look no further than the missed field goal by Brandon McManus. That could have sent this to overtime. And then again, the 1 for 5 in the red zone. If I just read this off to you guys, again, let's just we'll do the crystal ball thing again, where you say, okay, if I told you guys going into the game, the Packers get 1 turnover, sure. They outgain the Panthers by 110 yards. They don't punt. Josh Jacobs has his best game of the season. Jordan Love throws for 270 yards. Everyone would have suspected this was a Packers win. So again, the turnovers, the lack of red zone productivity, the way they couldn't stop the run, those are the 3 main reasons the Packers lost in this one. And again, you look at the big picture, you should convert at least 2 out of 5 red zone trips. So yeah, turnovers in there too, but again, just ridiculous play calls in there. And that gets to my final point, which is bad coaching. You guys have all probably figured it out by now. I'm a big Matt LaFleur fan. I think he's a great coach. The people that want him fired right now, they don't understand football. They also don't understand perspective. That's not to say he's above criticism. I think this is his worst performance as a coach this year for sure. One of his worst ever, I think. And I think the fire LaFleur people are the guys who always say, cut that guy. Why don't they just cut the player, right? All the people who are saying, cut Marshawn Lloyd. The dude, there's zero upside to cutting him. There's also zero upside to firing Matt LaFleur in the middle of the season. If you think the Packers are a Super Bowl contender, which I do, and clearly if you're angry about the way the season's gone, you do too, you fire the coach in the middle of the season's over. So I just feel like there's a group of people that are angry and they're trying to direct it somewhere, and I get that, right? I fall into that camp all the time. There's another group of people who just get this feeling of dominion over the situation. They watch ESPN highlights. They listen to one of these radio guys on ESPN Milwaukee, and then they feel good about themselves being in a position of power. I don't know what you call it, where they just bark fire LaFleur. If the Packers miss the playoffs this season and they tank this season, right? The rest of the season goes that way. If it's up to me, I do think missing the playoffs this season, you got to consider moving on from LaFleur. Barring any sort of catastrophic injury luck, obviously. Jordan Love gets hurt, Micah gets hurt, somebody like that, God forbid. If that happens, I'll be the first one after this season talking about possibly making a change. But we'll get into the overall outlook of the team at the end, right? We have to see how the season plays out first. That said, this was not near good enough from LaFleur in this one. It just feels like he's going into these games, he thinks he has to out-scheme and attack some kind of mystery weakness versus just going out, figuring out what his team does well in this season, 2025, and leaning into it. If you're as good as we think you are, there's no reason to play that way, right? You should be confident enough to go into every game and riding with what you're good at to victory, right? If you get into trouble and it's not working, that's when you have those plays ready to maybe attack a weakness, right? And that's how the Eagles play. That's how the Chiefs play. They know what they do well, and they do it, right? I think the other issue is Matt still thinks the best player on this team is Josh Jacobs, and that's because it was that way last season. I disagree. It's not because Josh Jacobs isn't a great player, but it's because the supporting cast doesn't allow him to be. That's the best way to put it. We're halfway through the season. This team still can't run block, guys. I will say in this game, I feel like they did look a bit better, and so did Jacobs. But he only got 17 carries. So it just feels really, really disjointed. And I think LaFleur, he looked at the linebackers and the safeties on the Panthers, just like I did, by the way. Go listen to the preview episode. I was, pardon my French, shitting on them all week, right, as the biggest weakness on that team. So I think he thought, well, we can take advantage of these guys on screens and some of that horizontal passing stuff, right? And yeah, it's true. The Panthers, they were playing a lot of too high shell, which basically means they play two safeties back, and they're saying you can't beat us deep in this one. And that has changed since the beginning of the season. If you guys remember some of the early episodes, right? Teams were going into those games planning to stop Josh Jacobs. But now, with the emergence of Jordan Love and this explosive passing attack, which by all definitions has been explosive, especially with, how many downfield completions he's been getting, right? Teams have started to play two deep safeties. And in LaFleur's brain, he says, okay, we need to run the ball and we need to work horizontally. Sure. But the annoying thing is the Steelers did the same thing last week. And in the second half of that game, the Packers tore the game open and beat the brakes off of that team with the quick game. So I just feel like LaFleur needs to do a better job of coaching the team he has instead of the team he wishes he had, right? And this is a quote I stole from Aaron Negler from Cheesehead TV. I could not agree more with that. He wants this team to be physical and downhill running just like they were last season, right? And you can see it in the moves they made in the offseason, right? They move on from Josh Myers. They sign Aaron Banks. They move Elton Jenkins to center. They draft Anthony Belton in the second round. Big guys, right? Not the typical guys that we've had in Green Bay. But that's not who we have. And until they can run block consistently, they need to let Jordan rip it. And I know Jordan threw a ridiculous pick in this game. We'll talk about that in a minute. By attacking a two safety look, by the way. But he played well. And why don't we'll just jump right into what went right in this game. Jordan Love went right in this game. I think he played really well in this one. And some of you might disagree, right? That interception was ridiculous, right? And he said in the post game that he didn't see the safety on the other side. If you take that safety out of the equation, and if you guys watch the All-22, I can see what he was seeing there. I think you guys would as well if you looked. But you still can't throw that damn ball. He was double covered, and yeah, Watson's fast, but it was a bad throw. He massively underthrew him. And again, it's just another one of those cases of Christian Watson being way too fast for Jordan Love's arm. And we know Jordan can throw the damn ball far, right? In the combine, he threw like 80 yards in the air. So, one of the reasons that, and this is Jordan's third pick of the season, right? Despite the way people talk about him being this reckless imbecile with the ball, Brett Favre 2.0, simply just not the case. The reason it feels that way, and I get it, it's because of when he throws the interceptions. In this game, down 7, late in the third quarter, right? He basically predetermined, I'm going to throw it deep to Watson, and we're going to get back in this game on one play. And then we saw what happened. Now, the near pick on 4th and 8, I know like PFF graded it really badly. I'm sure others will grade it badly as well, but he had to make a play there. He absolutely could not take a sack on that play. He had to throw it to the end zone, right? And he thought, well, Romeo Doubs was getting pushed out of bounds. I think he might have thought that he was going to get a call in that one, which maybe he should have. I don't know. I didn't think the officiating was too bad in this game. But he's expecting Romeo to make a play there, and Rome did nothing. And even though I thought Rome played a really good game in this one, right? I think he did the right thing there. He threw it up. He tried to give his guy a shot. I don't really kill him for that one, to be honest. But he made some really good throws in this game. And if you guys go back and watch it, outside of those 2 throws, he was pretty damn perfect on the day. And again, this is just a quick reminder. Golden went out in this game. Wicks was out. Reed is out. Kraft went out, which we'll talk about in a minute. Still just like, I want to cry that Tucker Kraft is hurt. And then Christian Watson was out for a bit of this game as well. So he's throwing to, Malik Heath and Savion Williams, who, I love Savion. You guys know that. But he's not a full down-to-down receiver yet. And, I thought he played pretty damn well. So that's that. The other thing that went right, Josh Jacobs in the running game. I thought this was the best production we've seen from Jacobs. They really couldn't just stand in and commit to the run, though, because of kind of the way the game was going, even though I would argue they probably could have done a bit more, even though I kind of goes back on what I just said. I liked what I saw from Jacobs, though. I put the all-22 on. I watched a couple of plays where, I thought the run blocking was much better in this one. He averaged 5.1 yards per carry, which was the best of the season so far. And there were a lot of plays that were blocked up well. And for this team to become a true Super Bowl contender, the one that we think they can be, they have to run the ball better. And that said, until they prove they can consistently, I'll add this, and I didn't put this in my criticism of LaFleur. If I see another 1st and 2nd down where they run the ball twice, I'm going to jump off a bridge. There just has to be less predictability there. It's just so frustrating. But overall, I thought Josh Jacobs in the running game looked pretty good in this one. Emmanuel Wilson, who looked so damn good last week, he had a couple of really nice running lanes in this one that he totally missed. So Emmanuel Wilson, not so good in this one. But I digress. Xavier McKinney, he had his breakout game in this one for the season. 82 PFF grade. We'll do PFF numbers in a minute. He had a great play on the interception, right? He had the sack fumble, which, by the way, guys, talk about bad luck, right? That sack fumble, I believe the Panthers scored on that drive. Xavier McKinney forced a fumble on Bryce Young, and it just bounced into Chuba Hubbard's lap. It's just wild. Like, that would never happen. The chances of that happening are just so low. And it's like Quay Walker, by the way, who thought played pretty poorly in this one. PFF agrees, by the way. Just standing there. Like, make a damn play. Crazy. Anyway, he had the sack fumble. He had a good PBU as well. 85 tackling grade, 78 coverage grade. I mean, I just really liked the game from McKinney. He was everywhere in this game. And I don't think he's been bad by any means this season, but he hasn't really been all pro level from what I can see. And hopefully this game was a step in that direction for him. All right, let's do top 5 PFF grades on offense. Number 1 was Josh Jacobs, 81.2. Like I said, best game of the year for Jacobs so far, production-wise. He was graded higher in some other games, but hopefully this is a preview of things to come in this one. Rasheed Walker was number 2, 75.9. His pass blocking grade was 78, and he had a good game against the Steelers too, against a really good pass rush. So back-to-back good games from Rasheed. I'll just answer this quickly. I had a friend of mine hit me up and ask if the Packers should re-sign Rasheed Walker. Going into the season, I would have said absolutely not, because he's a pretty average left tackle, and they already have Jordan Morgan, probably going to play left tackle next season. But with the way this offensive line has looked, I don't know if you can risk going with Jordan Morgan next season. I think you almost have to re-sign Rasheed at this point. But I digress. We'll talk about that another time. Zach Tom, number 3, 71.9. Jordan Morgan, 70.1. Really liked, PFF liked the offensive line in this one. And then Romeo Doubs, 68.2. Romeo Doubs had a good game. Let me pull his stats up really quick. He had, I think it was 5 first downs. He was targeted 10 times, caught 7 passes for 91 yards. So again, another good game from Doubs in this one. I really liked what I saw from him. He did have a drop on 3rd down, which he kind of juggled the ball and went out of bounds. You got to catch that damn ball. But overall, I can't nitpick too bad. I thought he played well. Jordan Love finished with a 61.5. He was credited with 2 turnover-worthy plays, which we know what they are, the pick, and then the crossbody throw on 4th and 8 that should have been a pick 6. I'm glad it wasn't. He was also credited with 2 big-time throws. There was a play in this game where it was going in for that final field goal drive in the first half where he had a really perfect layered throw to Doubs on a post route. Just a gorgeous throw from Love on that one. I've been watching it all week. Outside of the 2 bad balls, I was really happy with what he said in this one. Again, there's so many guys hurt at receiver. It got tough for him really fast in this one. Let's go to defense. Top 5 on defense, and watch how the grades taper off really quick, guys. Remember, 60 is average. Really good is in the 70s and 80s. So Xavier McKinney, 82.1. Their second highest overall player is Edge Cooper, 68.6. So as you can see, PFF hated this performance on defense, right? Their second highest graded player was in the damn 60s. That's bad. Edge Cooper, again, played well, 68.8 or 68.6, good grade. Certainly not what I hoped for. I'd really hyped up a better performance from Edge in this game. We just didn't see it. He was fine. But number 3, biggest surprise, Micah Parsons, 66.6. He was only credited with 1 pressure in this game. So that's back-to-back games that were pretty damn average for Micah. And again, after he went nuclear against the Cardinals, I do feel like the Panthers, it was less about Micah playing bad in this one. They just got the ball out quick, and they really did keep them on their toes running the ball. They still got pressured 9 times out of 20 dropbacks. Again, you got to be happy with that, but I hoped for more from Micah. I do think Micah's going to go into this Philly game going absolutely freaking nuclear. I think he's going to go crazy in this Philly game. Number 4, Keyshawn Nixon, 66.6. 60 coverage grade, but he did play well against the run. One of the few people that did. And then number 5 was Evan Williams, 65.8. Before we look ahead, I just wanted to talk about Tucker Kraft really quick. On a personal note, I love Tucker Kraft. I've loved the way he plays the game. I love his attitude. He's a massively talented tight end. I predicted it in the Bold Predictions episode that he was going to be an All-Pro this year. And, he was well on his way. He's probably been the 3rd best player on the team this year behind Jordan and Micah, and he was well on the way to that All-Pro. It's just gut-wrenching to lose him and for him to be out the rest of the season. I'm recording this on Tuesday night. Tucker was placed on IR today, and the team signed Josh Wiley to the 53-man roster. And guys, I do really like Josh Wiley. They picked him up in training camp off the Titans. I don't think he was just the regular roster. He was a cut-down guy. He is 6'7", 265 pounds. The dude's a freak. He's a really, really good athlete. He was drafted in the 5th round by the Titans. Another Cincinnati tight end. So perhaps we could see something from him. I would not be surprised if Josh Wiley ends up making an impact this year. So we'll see. I do like him. I've gotten probably 12 messages, actually confirmed 12 messages from friends, family, a couple listeners. The Pope hit me up. The mayor here in Madison hit me up. My dad hit me up from beyond the grave. You get the point. Asking if the Packers can still win the Super Bowl without Tucker Kraft. My answer is yes. One of the things that Tucker does best is he gets yards after the catch, and we've talked about that a lot. That element's going to be the only big thing missing. And my hope is that this might allow them to go into that quick game stuff a bit more and then really into that intermediate passing game. And it doesn't sound like Golden's going to be out very long. It sounds like he is just day-to-day. Hopefully that means he'll be back against Philly. Jaden Reed is getting closer. If I had to guess, I think Jaden Reed will be back by Thanksgiving. I really do believe that. And how nice would that be to get him back against the Lions, right? Christian Watson's snap count's going to get higher. Dontavian Wicks could be practicing this week, right? They have more than enough weapons on this team. And I do think they're going to have to change how they attack on offense a bit more. And I do think that their change could help them. Now, they need to start, in my opinion, looking more like the 2023 team that made the late season run versus trying to look like the 2024 team. And I do think this injury could essentially lead to that. Like, I don't know if LaFleur will have a choice but to play more in that way. And I think that's a good thing. Quickly, I want to touch on Luke Musgrave. A lot of people forget how good he was as a rookie. He set the rookie record for catches for a rookie. I think it was the rookie tight end record. It could be regular rookie in general. But he had some really, really good games that season. I've been a big fan of his since they drafted him. They picked him in the second round. I was jumping up and down excited when they drafted him. Not quite as much as Matthew Golden. I thought I was going to get divorced on that one. My wife was embarrassed. But when the Packers picked in the second round, I thought it was going to be Darnell Washington, which I talked about last week. But Luke Musgrave was my other favorite player in that draft. And, I'm a big fan. And many other podcasters have said this. He's just not a good number 2 tight end because he really doesn't block that well. He probably never will be a great blocker. Your tight end 2 has to block. Now, the thing is John Fitzpatrick is a good blocker, and I do think that from a blocking standpoint, Musgrave taking over as your receiving option and Fitzpatrick being the blocker, I think is actually going to be okay. Now, Musgrave is a much different player than Tucker Kraft, right? He can stretch the field vertically a bit more. He's definitely more of the wide receiver type. He's very similar to Jermichael Finley in terms of like the way he can be lined up, the way he can play, the way he can release off the line. Now, Jermichael Finley is one of my favorite Packers of all time. I think he, had he not gotten hurt, would have been a Packers Hall of Famer. I think he was the most talented tight end in the league when he was playing at his peak. In 2012 when he got hurt, 2013 when he got hurt, he was pacing for like a 1,200-yard season, and he never played again after that. Musgrave is very much similar to Jermichael Finley. They were the same number, so it's got to count for something, right? I have a feeling Luke Musgrave is going to step up and play really, really well here in the second half of the season. You saw a little bit in that final drive. He had 3 catches for 34 yards, I believe. 2 really big plays for first down. The one, he completely dusted that safety that was covering him. One-on-one, by the way. In terms of just pure athleticism, he's one of the most athletic tight ends in the entire NFL. He's been clocked several times, by the way. At the Senior Bowl was one of them. He can run over 22 miles an hour. I mean, the dude's a freak. He's 6'6", 265 pounds or something like that. Freak show. Can run. I think he ran a 4.53, I want to say. But again, nobody that size should be able to run 22 miles an hour. He's got really good hands. He's a really good route runner. He's a much better route runner than Tucker Kraft even. And you might be asking, well, why haven't we seen more of that? I don't know, to be honest. Obviously, he's not getting enough snaps with Tuck being in there. But I do think that he can really help this team. He's not going to be Tucker Kraft. He's not going to be an all-pro tight end, no. But I am picking him up in fantasy, which should tell you guys all you need to know, because currently I'm second place in my league, and I refuse to lose this season. I say that somewhat facetiously, but you get the point. I think we're going to see a lot of really good from Musgrave, and I do think the Packers offense is going to be fine. He has to stay healthy. That's the main thing. You know, he had his kidney burst his rookie season. That's eventually what paved the way for Tucker Kraft to be the starter, by the way. But we'll see. All right. I know it feels like the sky is falling. Needless to say, I believe I feel the same way. I should never be this mentally bruised after a football game, but I've been pissed off about this basically since Sunday at 3 o'clock. I turned the game off about 7 minutes left in the third quarter, went upstairs, watched Ink Master with my wife. Yes, I watch Ink Master. It's sick. Went in to check my computer at about 3:15 and saw that the Panthers beat the Packers by 3 points. So, I'm not happy about it. Ironically, I'm going to give you guys this before I get into my positives here, some silver linings. In 2010, when the Packers won the Super Bowl, they lost to a really bad Washington team, 16-13 in overtime, which essentially sent them to 5-3. So again, this loss is not going to define the season. It's just not. And I already went on my rant earlier about the 2011 team. This is a couple episodes ago, right? 2011 team, the Packers were 15-1. They looked unbeatable that whole season. And then they start to slow up at the end of the season. They catch a hot Giants team in the playoffs and lose at home. That was supposed to be a dynasty team. So the way you're playing in November, October is not how you're going to be playing at the end of the season. Now, it's getting close to that. This can't be an excuse the rest of the season every single time they play badly, right? At some point, you have to become the team you can be. But the Packers are still the number one seed in the NFC. They're still in first place in the NFC North. The Lions guys lost to the Vikings this weekend. They were a huge, huge, huge underdog, and they went and beat the Lions at home. J.J. McCarthy, who has barely looked like a damn starter, goes out and beats the Lions, right? So any team can win any given week. Guys, the Packers slapped the Steelers around last week, right? The Steelers go in and beat Indianapolis, who looked unbeatable. They completely dominated that football game. So again, I know we all like to, and if you guys haven't heard this phrase or this saying, it's true. The transitive property in the NFL does not exist. It's not like college. In other words, if you beat the Panthers, that doesn't mean that because the Panthers beat the Cowboys that you're better than the Cowboys and all that, right? A equals B equals C. That whole thing does not work in the NFL. Any given week, any team can lose. And the Panthers are a good team. I think that we kind of undersold how good they were. I certainly did myself. But the Packers are still plus 950 to win the Super Bowl. That's the fourth best odds in the NFL. They're plus 950 to win the Super Bowl, plus 450 to win the NFC. Only behind the Rams, by the way. Vegas still believes in this team. And they have from the beginning, by the way. And why is that? Why do they still keep the Packers up there despite a bad loss? Because they don't care how they look in November. They care how they're going to look in December and January. And we saw what the ceiling was for this team, right? I don't even know if we've seen it yet, to be honest. Week 1 and 2 looked insanely good against two really good teams. Now, I know the Commanders have fallen off a bit. They have been rattled with injuries. They were healthy. They were looking good. Everybody was talking about them as a Super Bowl contender, which I never bought, by the way. And then they looked insane in the second half against the Steelers. They can absolutely beat anyone any given week, including themselves, by the way. And then it happened again on Sunday. I made this joke on Twitter this last weekend, and I got like 40 people that liked it too. So, just went off. I should quit my job. That's how influential I am on Twitter. No, but in all seriousness, I made this joke about how this is like the total opposite of last season, right? The criticism all year last season was, the Packers, they're only beating the bad teams. And then we go and we play the Vikings and lose twice, the Lions and lose twice, the Eagles lose twice, right? So again, they're overrated because the only games they've played well in are the bad teams, the Seahawks, Dolphins, whatever. It's been the total opposite this year, right? They get the Lions in week 1, kill them. They dominate the Steelers the second half of that game. And then the Commanders, they dominate that game too. But what happens when they play the Browns? They lose. The Panthers, they lose. The Cowboys, they tie. So it's completely flipped this season. Right? They've played well in the big games, and then they play like ass in the other ones. So that means we should see, the Packers kill the Eagles next week, which I say somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but I do think the Packers are going to win next week, and we'll talk about that in our preview episode. I don't know if I'm actually going to pick them because it seems to be good luck when I don't pick them. Excuse me. Let's talk about DVOA really quick. The Packers are still 7th in DVOA overall. They're the only team in the NFL, though, that's top 10 in offense and defense in DVOA. They're still ahead of the Eagles on both sides, by the way. Offensively, Jordan's still playing at an MVP level with one or two glitches every couple of weeks. That's what I've been hearing. A couple people, Ross Uglum and Jake Morley, they always talk about how Jordan Love glitches once a game. But those glitches do not overshadow how well he's playing. I think LaFleur needs to give him the damn keys and just ride his right arm all the way to victory. I think that pass blocking wise, they're really, really, really good, especially now that everybody's healthy. They have weapons at every level, including running back, tight end. Yes, still tight end. And then the receivers are great. Let Jordan throw it. On defense, their run defense has scared me a bit. And I think they need to shore that up a bit. I do think that, again, they had guys in position last week. That's good. And I do think Colby Wooden getting hurt in this game really hurt them too, guys, by the way. But here's, again, to kind of back that up, right? They have the Packers have the fewest busted covers in the entire NFL since week 3, and the fewest missed tackles in the NFL since week 3. So again, this is a fundamentally sound defense. They just have to play a whole full 4 quarters. We did get some news. Nate Hobbs is going to be out for 2 weeks. I do think that's not good because, again, they're thin at corner. So if somebody gets hurt again, they're screwed. But I think more Carrington Valentine is a good thing. And I hope that means we'll see some Bo Melton out there at corner as well. Last thing, really, really quickly, Asante Samuel Jr. did get cleared by doctors to play. He's still a free agent. Right before I started recording tonight, there was a report by Matt Schneidman that the Packers are very interested in him. I would not be surprised if they made a play for him. He did have a down year in 2024, but I think he's a really good corner, really since he came into the league. And he's got versatility. He can play inside and out. He's got the draft pedigree. He was a second-round pick. Goody likes that. And most importantly, he was a pre-draft visit for the Packers when he came out. And you know their pre-draft visits, they still poach those guys whenever they get a chance. I think at bare minimum, he's a depth piece. And his ceiling could be he's the best corner on the team. He can play inside. He can play outside. I do think we should keep an eye on that in the coming days. He's healthy to play. He just got cleared today. So I think we should be on the lookout for that. All right. This episode went long. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. A little bit of Packers therapy with your boy Ian. I'll be back probably this weekend, ultimately, to preview the Packers-Eagles on Monday Night Football next week. In the meantime, hopefully you guys have a good rest of the week. I will see you all on the weekend. In the meantime, go Pack, go.